This is the Project V, Caterham's next evolution into its electric future. A 2+1 3-seater GT coupe designed to win drivers' hearts with its stunning looks and by placing driving fun above the shock factor acceleration figures usually associated with marketing new EVs. It achieves this by keeping the weight down to 1,190 kilograms, already low by today's standards on any sports car, let alone for an EV. Its 200 kilowatt motor will deliver a 0 to 62 time of around 4.5 seconds, comparable with other sports cars at its sub 80k price point. Its 268 horsepower or 272 PS will result in a top speed of just under 150 miles an hour with the instant torque of an EV on tap. And with its 55 kilowatt hour battery, a key reason for its low weight, you'll be able to drive for up to 250 miles, depending on how you drive of course. And if you take it on track, it can recharge from 20% to 80% in just 15 minutes given the right charging infrastructure. Today, we're getting up close and personal with the car as we explore its design philosophy with Caterham's new chief designer, Anthony Jannarelly.
So the first time I became aware of you was with the Design One, beautiful car, and partly interested me because it has a 3.5 litre Nissan VQ in it. And of course, the CEO of Caterham, he is formerly a program director for Nissan sports cars and has appeared on this channel before. But this connection didn't come about through that, did it?
Bob Lashley, used to live in Dubai for a short while, and I was there, and the first car I bought there was a Caterham Seven, which is not a common thing there. And a friend of mine said, "Oh, would you like to be introduced to the chief strategy officer of Caterham? I know you love Caterham." I said, "Yeah, of course, I would love it." And we started to chat, and Bob had the chance to drive the Design One as well. And we got closer and closer, and at some point he decided to tell me about the next step for Caterham and asked me to do a proposal. And I was the one to be selected, so I'm super happy, of course. But no, I asked him before if there was any way why he chose me except the fact that I was selected through their board, and he said no, it's just no, we might be a bit friends, but apparently he believed in what I could achieve, so that's great.
Well, we actually had a little bit of a behind-the-scenes conversation with Bob. I think everybody, including the parent company of Caterham, felt that your proposal just went a bit further than everyone else and had that connection with the brand, with the DNA, and had that an understanding of it. And I think we can see that in the car. You look at this, it's not like, oh, what is that? No, that actually looks just like a Caterham, just in a way that you can't put your finger on. I think you helped to lay the template for the future DNA of Caterham, so congratulations. How would you describe this particular car that we're looking at right now?
It's a concept car. On the spectrum, let's say the range of concept car, you have really like the dream and fantasy car and the close to production. So I would say this is close to production because we did some kind of pre-feasibility study. So it means every shape you create has been checked by an engineer in some light way in some sort, but it has been checked. For instance, the windshield, the curvature of the windshield is correct for homologation. And this is very, very important to be able to check that before, because once you start to draw the windshield, the rest of the car has to follow. And if we were wrong, for instance, it would be a nightmare later on to find how to find a solution for the design.
What would you say is the standout thing that sets this apart from things you've done in the past?
This car is aimed at being sold at a bigger volume, so it's going to be a bit more mainstream. I'm used to do like either extreme hypercars like the Lycan at the time, and then yes, the Design One. They are like cars that are supposed to be more like in a very niche market, and so this time we had to appeal to a broader audience. So that's why we see the design as some softer cues, much more universal. The best basically is to start from a concept. Sometimes people think like a designer is more like a stylist who just draw quickly a thing and because he has some crazy idea in his mind. But the truth is like you try to analyze first and find a core concept. So of course, like the story of Caterham is linked to Lotus in some sort. And since then, they only produce a 7, so like we had to find some kind of styling DNA in the 7 and to really try to translate this into a modern era on a car I would call like a small GT. And the principle was that, you know, Caterham stands for like fun to drive, of course, simplicity and lightweight. So how do I translate this into a shape, you know? So the simplicity is to try to find as much symmetrical area you can in a car. So after we'll have a look around. But so first is symmetry, and then finding the perfect proportions that are very balanced, because it's also something that it's important when you, I don't want to be too extreme in some sort, you know. And if you want, like the car is divided in three stages. You know? And so if you think about it, the 7 is very form follows function, which means basically what you see is what is useful, you know. And so what I wanted to show in this car is that it's a car that has to flow through air. It's an electric car, that it will have to be efficient. So I wanted to show that it's going to be aerodynamic. So the whole bottom of the car, what you see is black, is actually all the device that will help the car to be efficient through the air. And then you have a second layer. We are in a different world where we can master the shape, you know. At the time, you are doing aluminium, you are following the chassis. Now today you can be in control of the shape much more easily. But I wanted to reflect back to this geometrical aspect of the 7. So you will see you have very sharp surfaces in the middle area of the car. And then finally, the top of the car, it's very smooth, very slick, and you know, it's some sort very organic. And again, if you think about the 7, look at the nose of the 7. It's made out of fiber, and it's very organic and slick, and then you'll have the geometrical shape. So it's a stretch, but you know, you try to take these cues and blending them together, so you are able to apply this to a GT concept, which is not something Caterham was expected to do, you know. But where I'm pleased that these styling cues, I think we brought them on this car today, and one day if they want to make another car, I'm sure we'll be able to replicate that. So for a designer, it's very important to be able to create this family feeling.
I absolutely love the design on this car and that balance between function and form. As cars a lot today are going that modern retro style with the hard angles and trying to look like that. This feels like a modern retro. It's got that retro beauty to it, but it still looks modern. It's got the nice form-flowing lines, but with the hard angles to it.
You said it's true, like there's something why it looks retro. It's not an intention to say we wanted a vintage feel or retro car. It's just because in the past we were making simpler car because the technique was less. We had less choice in some sort of in the shape. For instance, most of the cars, they were made out of aluminium or they were made by hand, and they had to be simple. You know, you couldn't create very complicated trees, etc. So that's why as soon as you apply the same principle of simplicity, suddenly you are throwing back, you know. So it's just a result. Honestly, it wasn't an intention to say we want to be vintage, but the result is great because I think the golden era of the car design was in the 60s. Like everybody seems to agree on that, you know.
So are there specific details on this car that you are especially happy and proud of?
I keep saying that often, but it's this small blade because this particular area of the car, I think it's so much Caterham because on the 7 everything is exposed. So ideally, you know, you would have as many parts exposed as possible on this car as well, but you have to cover the chassis and the wheels. And I really try to cover, to put, let's say, to use the minimum volume possible. So in this area, you see it's very deep, and actually the main body actually stops here, you know. And here you see the nose of the 7. And it's a very sculpted shape, and I think people like this aspect of this 3D dimension. And obviously here, what to do? No, you're left with an empty area, and making this small blade just to direct the air through around the tire just made me create this kind of gap. And actually, I think it works, and it's something very significant of Caterham now. And at the same time, as I explained sometimes, is that it's also simpler to manufacture, because in car design, what's very difficult is all to maintain all the panel gap. And for me, it has to work. This styling cues has to help the engineer as well. So I would say I'm proud of this part.
I have something I wanted to ask you about on the back of the car. First off, the hips. I love the way the car bulges out. The hips almost remind me of the old Vanquish, the way that they kind of pop out straight. They kind of have a hard but soft angle, so hard enough that you can see, but soft enough that it really flows. And I really love that. And from when you look at the car from the rear, you get that exposed rear tyre. It's got that race car, supercar feel to it, even though it's marketed and budgeted around a sports car market. It really gets that upscale feel.
Again, think of trying to add the minimum volume to cover the chassis. So as soon as you can carve out some material, in some sort I would do it. So this is a concept car, but it's very realistic. The production car will be 95% close to this shape. And for instance, the cut here, the wheel has to be covered, but it can only be. We don't have to cover the wheel from here to here. The regulation gives you this angle. So it means I can just cut out and let the tire be exposed. It's less material. And it's also for me a way to create some contrast between this very sleek and organic shape, very sensual shape, and suddenly it's like you take a knife and you cut through the shape. And so again, it's to give character to the car, to bring back to this geometrical aspect of the Seven, and also to create a lot of contrast. In anything, in music, in art, in painting, you always want to create contrast. That's what we love. So I think when you play with the shape, that's how you manage to get some contrast. And what you said about the Aston Martin, actually, it's kind of true. There was this muscle in the Vanquish. What we try to do here is to be very subtle as well. For instance, we worked a lot in this area. And one thing we did with the 3D modelers and the surfacer, we were trying to capture the light correctly. And sometimes this zigzag, you have a zigzag shape like this. It was a bit too much, a bit strange, etc. And sometimes it was fading. And in this area, I like to quote this because we were struggling sometimes. We had a very strange light here, and we managed to catch it perfectly. When they move this area, 1 millimeter deep, 1 millimeter. So it's just to show how precise sometimes you have to be with cars. And anybody, even some people say to me, I'm not a designer, I cannot understand this, but yeah, if I move 1 millimeter, you would see the difference. Anybody would see the difference. That's why I'm still amazed sometimes by this. We are creating like 4 meter 20 cars, but 1 millimeter can change a lot.
One of the things that you've talked about is these sort of parts that are cut away from the car, and I notice at the back there's a lot cut away. How realistic is it for us to see that level of material that's been removed staying as it is once we get closer to production?
The rear actually is maybe the most realistic part in some sort. For instance, if really this doesn't work for homologation, we can just add a little piece of carbon or something like that. You see that on some other cars, But the rest, the bumper, it's really like actually how to make things simple again. I mean, think of the assembly of this bumper. There's no difficult line to adjust, It's horizontal and it's attached from the bottom. So imagine if someone bump into you, you will not damage this area of the car, So it's properly the function of a bumper, As long as you are 2.5 millimeter radius everywhere, I think it's fine for homologation. On many cars, a concept car, for instance, but we had to think of how to position the registration plates in the right area, and for all the markets, like USA, Japan, so you see you have different size, So everything has been checked out already,
Let's take a look inside.
because we are making a sports car, we try to make it as low as possible. But the best location for the battery, it's always in the floor for the center of gravity and the dynamic. So what we did is actually right under the seat, it's empty, so the seat can be down. And then in the footwell and beyond, the floor is raised to house the battery. That's how we can manage to get this package, this silhouette outside, and make sure we have enough battery volume.
That's fascinating, because that's one of the things we love most about cars, is being able to sit low and feel like you're in the car. You never want to be driving a car where you're in a bus. So the fact that you've made the space so that the seat can sit in there, that's brilliant.
You know, exterior, interior, it's always the same principle. We try to keep the same philosophy. So when you think about it, what you need in a car today, it's like safety, so it's airbag. Then you need a bit of electronics just to guide you around. You need the infotainment. So we just use the smallest screen on the market for that. You only use your phone. There will be no infotainment system coming from Caterham because I think it's pointless. And there is AC, and that's it, you know. So for me, the brief was, okay, we feature all this in the most simpler way, in some sort. We have some kind of minimalistic interior, but I still wanted a little bit of refinement because think about it, for me, this car is more like a small GT. So you're supposed to spend some time in the car. And because it's electric, you notice that the car is not that big, but the interior cabin is way bigger just because we have an electric package. It would be a different car if it was featured with an ICE internal combustion engine. So the fact that we can carve out a lot of space make it almost a daily drive, you know. So you need to be a bit cozy, and I wanted this feel. And for me, like there is some Britishness in it, you know. You always want to be a bit elegant and a bit refined. So I wanted to implement this in the car while still being very minimalistic, because if you check the details of the car, there's not much actually. It's not, but the materials are nice, the shapes are simple. The carbon fiber panel, it's a flat panel, something you don't do today in car design. But the great thing about it is that if you want to do a wooden trim or aluminum trim, it's easy to customize and to change, you know. So again, it's trying to get simple solution and just applying to in modern cars, you know. And I think Caterham is great at doing that now.
It's a 2+1, but there will be an option for a 2+2. Where did the idea of a 2+1 with a seat in the middle at the back come from?
It comes always from personal experience, you know. Sometimes I've been at the back of the car just for 5-10 minutes, you know. So you can realistically only house one adult, you know. And if you're a kid, then you're stuck behind this seat and it's not fun for you. So I thought, okay, it would be very, very nice if a kid could sit in the middle so you could still see the road. And you know, when you're a designer, you always imagine scenario. That's the way you design things, you know, how this car would be used. And I always thought like, you can be a dad with your two kids. One is a teenager and one is a younger child. And they don't fight to come with you, you know, you can take them both. If you're a couple with one kid, you can stay in the middle. And it's this extra usability, you know, because of the sports car. Imagine you buy this sports car, it's a two-seater. Suddenly you start your family, and then what do? And I thought, okay, that's the advantage of the electric package over maybe a more thrilled petrol engine car, you know.
One of the things I really love about the interior design is that mixture of simplicity, even things like the switch panel. I love that, that is so cool. The use of physical buttons. Obviously, other than the head unit, which is all you need today, you don't need a UI anymore because everyone just connects their Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as it is. But one thing I noticed is it has digital dials as opposed to physical dials, which I'm assuming is a first for Caterham.
It's simplicity and economic sense, because actually a screen today is much cheaper than actual dials. If you think about it, it's like an automatic watch and of
course, yeah.
Basically, the advantage of the screen is like if you want to update, it's easy. There is no physical part in movement, you know. So, and today it will talk to the ECU, so it's all digital, no? Actually, today having a gauge it's more complicated.
I also do love the door card design. I think that's really nicely done. Positioned in a way that you can press comfortably, but it still looks like a statement piece. And the door pull for the handle as well. Very race car, I love it.
And again, it's you use this handle because you don't have a part to develop. It's lighter and it works perfectly.
Stepping slightly away from this and more to you as a designer, do you do a lot of paper drawings, get an image? Do you do a lot of the 3D stuff yourself? How does it go from concepts to 3D to reality?
The car is really a modern sculpture, you know? And it's a sculpture that has to be dynamic. So if you only think of drawings, it's a shame because you know, I don't know, some people they just draw and you have this perfect view and you think it's very nice, but you see on the camera, you will see the way we turn around the car, you're never static, you know? So like the poster shape where you only have the side view profile working perfectly, unfortunately that's not the way we should design. So what I do is like I sketch very quickly by hand in a loose way, you know, just to get the idea to understand the volume and just to find some kind of styling ideas, but then just to make sure they work, straight away I go in 3D. I model myself on 3D software just to make sure that, okay, this assembly of volume works from front view, from side view, and angle view. Once I can tweak the shape, and I'm pretty happy about it, then you know I have to my expertise stop, and I have to rely on 3D modeler and 3D surfacer. For instance, for this aspect, we worked with Ital Design. They work for OEM, so they have such a broad knowledge about cars and about the technique, how to manufacture things. So it's always very close to the engineering side as well, because when you model a shape, you need to make sure it's manufacturable. For instance, if it's a mold, you have to be able to mold the shape. And because they have an extensive knowledge about this, we managed to be very efficient in some sort.
What's the best reactions you've had at the show today?
I mean, where I'm extremely pleased is that this design seems to be very universal in some sort. Men, women, kids, from any age, any culture, any country, you know, they seem to like this car. And you know, we say like Americans, they like big cars, you know, Japanese small car maybe, and the women, they have certain type of style. And where I'm always pleased is that I try to find some kind of universal beauty in what I do. And for me, it seems that it seems to be working, you know. And I'm super pleased because Caterham is this very friendly brand, you know. There's no aggressivity, so it's fun to drive. And so if the design can translate the same spirit, for me, it's a big win, you know.